right, so this is the Stage Time Podcast with Travis Valle, and I'm talking today with Kyle Remnant. Say hi, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Yep, I knew you were going to say that, but that's fine.
I'm a smart ass.
This is a podcast where I'm hopefully going to interview various comedians, and we're going to talk about career first. And as we're having a comedian on for the first time, the first topic will be first time performing comedy. I'm hoping people enjoy this. We'll have some funny people on. We can talk about some funny stuff, and we'll pretty much get into what makes a comedy career possible. Maybe not for money, but at least for the enjoyability of it. So I'm going to talk to Kyle Remnant here, who is a comedian from, well, Kyle, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm a comedian from, Shenandoah Valley, Virginia. I grew up in Bridgewater, lived in Harrisonburg for a while, and live in Bridgewater again. Not that the two cities are that far apart.
As we're starting this recording, Kyle and I just finished a show together, which actually went pretty well. Probably one of our biggest audiences, I think.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think so too. Done Seven Arrows Brewery, Waynesboro, Virginia, where I host a monthly event. 7 comedians do 7 minutes each, kind of going along with the Seven Arrows theme of the brewery itself. Used to co-host that with a friend who unfortunately moved back to Nebraska. So yeah, it's Tate Myers. Get a shout out to Tate, a good guy, but wanted to move back closer to family, and I get it. But yeah, Seven Arrows, look it up.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get Tate on at some point, but we'll see how this goes and if this project's even viable. This may never see the light of day, so who knows. But it's probably worth noting Kyle has also beat me out in a comedy competition before, so that's
honestly why he had me on.
Yeah.
Just learn from me. No.
Yes. Give a little credential to my little podcast here, this shoddy workmanship. So we are going to talk about Kyle's first time performing comedy. We'll probably talk about mine at some point. Maybe we'll mix it in, but I still haven't decided how I'm going to do that episode, if at all. But in order, for the sake of time, we'll try to keep this relatively short. We'll have some good conversations, cover some good topics. First thing I want to start off is, what got you interested in stand-up comedy?
Oh man, I've been a fan forever. Watching all the Netflix specials when Netflix, went from discs to streaming, just like watching like the original Daniel Tosh and Mike Birbiglia and stuff like that. Just kind of fell in love with the art form. I'm a musician by trade. By trade, as if I get paid for it. I'm a trombone player. I do a lot of theater.
And you've incorporated some of that into your comedy even.
Yeah, it's hard to play trombone and tell jokes, but I do guitar and sing some jokes. Honestly, it's kind of a different verse chorus form versus set up punchline form, but I enjoy incorporating music into it. But I think it was during my doctorate. I was doing a doctorate in trombone at James Madison University, go Dukes, and it was like right after winter break of my first year of the doctorate, where I was like, I need to do something else performative based, something that will kind of keep my creativity going, that isn't just playing trombone, studying trombone, doing a harmonic analysis of symphonies and things like that. So I saw that Brothers, where you currently host the open mic, I saw that they were doing one back when Christopher Cantrell was doing one.
Mm-hmm. And it should be worth noting that, I pretty much took over a open mic from someone previously. There was about a year, maybe 2-year gap, and then I kind of restarted it.
It was like right in that COVID time where you tried to keep it going, but you had also moved 2 hours away. So it was hard to do. And I think once he got his footing in Richmond, Virginia, and you were like, all right, is this happening? Yeah.
That was a bummer too, because there's not a whole lot of comedy opportunity area, like in the Harrisonburg area. So and that was the thing, I think, with COVID. I saw kind of an opportunity of nobody's doing anything. Right. We're all kind of at home. Yeah. And I was like, I needed a hobby. So I was like, maybe I'll reach out to them and see if I can. Apparently anyone could just start one. So, I mean, that's kind of the thing too.
Teachers, they were like, I need a hobby. So they do comedy.
Over the summer.
Right. Exactly. What can I do in 3 months? Well, it's certainly not relax.
Yeah.
We're not trained to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Mike Birbiglia and Daniel Tosh. So were those specific comedians that you found influential, or were there anyone in particular who you thought, I saw them and I'm like, I want to do this?
Well, so the first comedian I ever saw in person was Jim Gaffigan.
Good choice.
Fantastic. Yeah. Great. I mean, his form and just everything, it's so formulaic. And like points. I hate that because it's like all formula, but it hits just about every time, and he knows his audience and his structure and everything. So I saw him in New York City, New York Town Hall or something, when I was there with the JMU marching Royal Dukes in the Thanksgiving parade in 2008. And some friends were like, oh, we should go do something. And Broadway tickets were super expensive, but Jim Gaffigan was less expensive, so we did that. And so he was the first one I saw in person, and I that was a huge kind of inspirational point. But yeah, I used to like Daniel Tosh a lot more. Like, I don't know that he's kind of like not fallen. He has taken an intentional different path with comedy, I would say. But Mike Birbiglia, for sure, because especially in his earlier days, would incorporate some guitar.
I was going to say, he's incorporated some music.
And like his Catholic tradition, and I pull in some of my Church of the Brethren tradition. Not that anyone knows anything about the Church of the Brethren compared to the Catholic Church. Yeah, where you
that's the thing about Christianity, too, is like any portrayal of Christianity you see in media, it's always just default Catholic.
It's Catholic, because it's either Catholic or Protestant, which is just a whole can of worms in its own. So, yeah.
But even so, like, Protestant is more prevalent in the United States, but for some reason, Catholic seems to be the go-to. I think because there's a lot more, especially for like supernatural stuff, there's a lot more mythology around it that people can borrow. I mean, what's a Mennonite mythology? What's
Mennonite Jesus? There's another comedian Jesus, we know that does a
talks about Mennonite Jesus a lot.
Mennonite Jesus bit versus Baptist Jesus versus Brethren Jesus. Yeah, it's like they're all the same Jesus.
Yeah,
none of them are white.
None of them are white.
But the paintings in our churches, he is white.
Yeah. You know, it was funny. I had a religion professor who talked about the portrayal of Jesus as like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy. And I never really interpreted those images as blonde-haired, blue-eyed. I just thought it was like a brown-haired guy. But I'm just bad with colors, maybe, because I guess that's supposed to be blonde. Is that what, like, your kind of Western interpretation?
Maybe you just don't see race.
Maybe I just don't see race. I'm just colorblind.
All right. So my wife and I are youth coordinators at our church, and there is an image of Jesus hanging from the wall, but not in the crucifixion hanging way, but like also not in like it's not nailed onto a vertical platform. He's like in the ceiling tiles and like hanging at an angle. Kind of looking down on them, which is like really not the message that we actually preach about in our church. But he's still pretty white, brown hair for sure. Definitely, you can see the wear and tear of the sand of the desert and all of that. But
you've clearly kind of modeled your look after him.
I mean, I've got the long hair. I mean, it's coming down. I mean, if I let it go, it goes up and out. It's like more of a burning bush with Moses than it is with down and gracious. It's just all over the place.
So what got you to actually take the leap into stand-up comedy? You were kind of getting to that before I cut you off with something.
No, that's all right. I love the tangents, and that's what some of my students, I teach at a small private liberal arts school in Harrisonburg, and a lot of my students in their course evaluations, they say, I love the tangents during rehearsals. I'm like, great. Well, that's actually not a testament to my teaching. It's a testament to my ADHD. So no, I'm here for the tangent. What got me to actually do it was a cousin of mine who's not even in this area was like, oh, you absolutely should do it. Because I could see it going well. So I found some friends in my doctoral program and like, hey, come out, I'll buy your first beer.
So are you like the funny one of the friend group? Is that where this kind of came from?
I was never officially the class clown growing up because I was a little more introverted outside of the band world. So I didn't do a ton.
Band camps where you can really let yourself go and
absolutely. I absolutely ate a whole tray of brownies during band camp one year just to entertain some of the first years, like freshmen when I was a senior.
Dude, calm down. A whole tray of brownies.
A whole tray? No, I'll brag on that. I've eaten a cake and a half before. Like I should have been a professional eater.
They go hard at band
Probably
camp.
pays just as much as comedy.
Yeah.
Get a free meal out of it. That's all I know. No, so it was just friends were like, yeah, I'll come support it. Like I don't think I would have gone the first time if I didn't have two of my friends come with me. And they were like, if you buy our first beer, we'll be there.
I was actually the opposite where when I decided I wanted to do my first time, I was like, I'm not telling anybody about this because I don't know how it's going to go. And I just don't want to wildly embarrass myself in front of anybody.
Oh, no, I did that just also in front of my friends.
Yeah. Well, so like I would invite people because I also play music. And I do music open mics. I would invite people to that, and nobody would ever come out. So, like once in a blue moon, maybe a friend.
No
one
wants to hear your band, Travis.
Exactly.
No,
so I was like, nobody's going to carry.
Right.
They're going to care even less about me being kind of funny, maybe hearing stories that they've already heard before.
Yeah.
So, how did your first time end up actually? I actually didn't know that Yours was. Are you saying yours was at Brothers?
It was at the Brothers Open Mic.
Was it the one I hosted, or was it when?
No, it was with Christopher Cantrell.
Right, good. That'll make this more interesting.
It was January of 2019,
okay.
And it was a packed house. It was
the good old days.
Right. It was pre-COVID, where everyone's just like, "Oh yeah, I'll get a beer. Why drink at home and be safe with my health?
Yeah.
No, I want to go drink and probably make out with everyone there." I don't know what people thought pre-COVID.
Yeah,
I don't remember those days. No, but it's fact. I remember going 15 minutes before it started and saying, "Hey, it's my first time. Can I get on?" And he's like, "Oh my God, we're at 2 hours, but yeah, I'll try and get you in there." And luckily, a couple people had left. This is longer than I want.
Signed up.
Right. It was a 2-hour list of people, and it was ridiculous. And by the end of it, it just kind of devolved into the bartender who was working was like, "Oh yeah, I'll do a set." One of the brewers at Brothers, who's a friend of mine,
so that's the thing.
Did a set, and he was like, "I don't know about comedy. I just wanted to tell a couple of jokes that I knew."
I feel like it's either people who take this super seriously and have this list of bits that they want to do, or it's just random people in the audience who are just I'll give it a shot and I'll tell a funny story that only my friends will get.
But they only say that after they've had a few.
Yeah.
So you're right. Yeah. But no, I remember there were a couple other JMU grad students who I had met through non-musical grad things.
That's always fun
that
too.
were there
college students are at your shows.
What but the grad students though?
Okay.
So they'll drink slightly. Well, they'll drink irresponsibly, but know how to do it.
Yeah.
But I remember a guy that I met who was president of the Graduate Student Association at the time, who also eventually went on to Survivor. Shout out to Jack Nishting. I don't even know how to say his last name.
Gotcha.
He was on Survivor, which was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember him being some business leadership grad student who was there with another friend who was in comedy for the first time. And it wasn't even my own friends that said "Oh, great job." It was Jack's yeah. Good stuff. That was your first time? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it was that's not a great compliment. Oh, for your first time, that was awesome. But that's enough to keep you going.
Yeah.
And so, it was a positive experience, even though we went past Brothers closing time and ended up kind of missing dinner and having to go to Taco Bell at 2 a.m. But it was one of those nights that I remember it started snowing on the way home. It was it's memorable.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't great.
Set the mood.
Right. It was I can.
That's the opening scene of your biopic when you become a big comedian. It's I remember it was a snowy night, man.
Uphill both ways in the snow, right? It's one of those kind of old-timey stories, yeah.
So, do you remember what jokes you told that night?
I blamed my parents for a lot of stuff, which, I shouldn't do because I do love my parents. I think I had a pretty solid childhood, which is not the background of most comedians.
I feel that's where a lot of people try to go for an easy joke is just make fun of people they know. Or
we was
their
even
family
making fun of I did this earlier tonight, kind of making fun of my own name. Kyle is not a great name. When you think of Kyle, you think flame tattoos on the back of the calves. You think of pounding the Red Bulls.
I think of South Park.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
a nice little juice boy.
Right. And and I forgot my yarmulke that night. No. But punching holes in the wall because our temper and stuff. And those stereotypes aren't bad. They're not wrong.
Yeah.
I feel like Kyle's the male Karen sometimes. But yeah, I kind of made fun of that. And obviously, every first time open micer says something about it being their first time and they make a joke about that.
Yeah.
And everyone gives the pity laugh or we've seen open mics before. Right. So I remember doing something about that. I was it's my first time. So go easy on me and I might not make it 5 minutes or something like that. Not an original joke by any stretch of the imagination. But when I said it, it was oh, that's funny. I'm the first person to ever think of that.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Not at all. So I remember that not well, but I remember also having, it was not necessarily set up punchline structure. It was more comical storytelling about my upbringing, which is not ultimately the stand-up
methodology.
It's not what you want to get into, right?
Yeah. Well,
long term.
So I feel that's a common thing that happens with stand-up. And that's why when I first started, I was very kind of scientific about it. I was okay, what works and what doesn't? I know and I think this is looking to myself a bit where I know I'm not a good storyteller for the laugh of it. The part I think is going to be funny, nobody else cares about. So I need that setup punchline.
Okay.
Bit. So I was very deliberate when I started, but I do think that's a pattern from when most people start off is they're going to tell, oh, this was a funny story where I got hurt or my friend did something stupid and everybody else is going to get in on the joke, but nobody cares because first of all, it usually takes a very long setup that where they explain way too many details that are relevant to the overall story, or they themselves aren't really sure where the funny part's supposed to be.
Right. And how much is too much detail?
Exactly.
Honestly, any at all.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you really dive into the art of stand-up, you realize only give the audience what they need to know, which is something I still struggle with because I'm a tangential guy. I'll run on a tangent talked about my students appreciating the tangents. I don't. I wish I weren't ADHD and I could stick to my script, but I don't. I'm also not like super. I mean, there's some stickler on writing, so like I just kind of go with the flow.
There's some people who make good sets of that where they can do more freeform. It took a long time for me to be comfortable doing like crowd work, or like even tonight in our show, I asked a few questions, but like even those questions I prepared beforehand because I knew they were going to elicit funny responses. But I will play off how the audience responds to that. I do have a kind of an idea of they're intentionally awkward questions, so it's funny to see what they're going to say in response.
Yeah, and I don't know, what your next question was, but maybe it'll segue into something new. But I think
you're ruining my script.
No,
go ahead.
I ruin my own scripts, dude. Every time I go up there, like I have a plan, and then I just don't care. No, tonight I didn't even have a plan. Like I hosted a show, and being the host is just connecting with the audience and kind of warming them up to hear scripted material after that, right? So like I started, and this was at your open mic once you were doing Brothers. I started just going up with nothing. Not necessarily intending to bomb, but also being super open to bombing. Yeah. Just because I know that bombing in a 5-minute set at an open mic is not, losing your mortgage. It's not losing your house. It's not like, it's just, it's a little embarrassing, sure, but it builds not only the, I'm going to call it the ball pucker, like when you feel like you're falling and like the balls pucker a little bit. It's kind of that feeling, but it's also like it gives you the like, okay, I'm falling, but like, how do I recover from that? And how do I connect with people? Even if things aren't going well, how do I make connections with the audience? And I think that's ultimately like looking back to pre-comedy, what I did more of was like, I went to seminary for a little bit and tried to connect with the congregations that I preached to, or like, I'm not trying to get churchy here, like, my feelings on that. But it was that kind of background that kind of helped me in those situations. It's teaching in front of students where you're like, I don't know if they're understanding this, like how can I say this differently to get it across, but then like explaining your jokes isn't the same as like explaining a lesson. So like finding the similarities and differences between,
because I'm also a teacher and I know like there's specific things you have to go over as a teacher where you're like, I can't make this any more interesting than you either have to be on board with this or it's not.
Things that the state of Virginia tells you
exactly
you have to teach.
Whereas comedy, there's obviously a lot more freedom. Now you have to learn to read the room, and you can't have times where, like, so going back to it, that's one thing you definitely have to be comfortable with when you go on stage is you have to face the reality that you might bomb tonight. It might be dead silent for the entire 5-10 minutes, however long you're on stage, and you have to be okay with that. Fortunately, what I think most people who at least stick with comedy tend to get that beginner's luck where they laugh at least one joke, and that gives you the high of, I want to try this again.
Yeah, it's like a golfer like birdieing one hole in 18. They double bogeyed the rest of them, but they birdied one. They're going to go pay $60 to play again.
Exactly. Just blow all your time and money into this thing that's ultimately going to be.
That's what stand-up is. No. Stand-up's a little cheaper depending on how many beers you buy in the evening, but like.
So kind of going back to the lack of opportunity area, I would have nights where I'd drive down to Charlottesville, which is an hour from where I live. And that's a whole other thing where you got 20, 30 people signed up. God knows where you're going to end up on the list. If you end up going last after everybody's left and then you end up bombing, that's basically in your head. And I've had this exact drive home where I'm just screaming at myself, hitting my steering wheel, just be like, you idiot, that was a terrible set. Why'd you drive an hour, spend 2 hours doing nothing, and then just you got nothing out of it.
We so quickly beat ourselves up over things that we perceive that don't go well. But like, there are things that go well in every set, and there are learning experiences from every set. And I remember a time or two where things did not go well in my mind at all. But there were still a couple people that would be like, I really like this thing. And so that to me meant like, okay, build on that, scrap the rest, or figure out a different way to say the rest. So there's a learning opportunity every time you go in front of a mic and an audience.
I've got one of my own rules where it's basically when I write a new joke, I'll try it at least 3 different times.
Okay.
And if someone laughs 1 out of those 3 times, I'll stick with it.
Sure.
It might need refining,
Sure.
but at least there's something there. And I have had stuff where nobody's laughed 3 out of 3 times, so I'm going to move on with something else. Or maybe I'll revisit it later in a different format.
You've never had a 100% success rate with a joke?
No. That's
You're
the
human.
thing, too. So exactly. Well, that's the thing, too, isn't it? Like, comedians also have to remember that you can have a joke that goes well 99% of the times, but you're going to hit that one time where it's just going to be dead silent, and it's going to boggle your mind. Like, when you have a 50% success rate on a joke, you kind of prepare for it.
Sure.
But when you've hit a joke every time, and then for some reason you hit that one time, it's like, what just happened? Did I deliver it wrong? Did they not hear it? Yeah. Are they just not a funny crowd? And sometimes it is the crowd. I try not to blame the crowd immediately. I try to be a little more self-reflective, but you have to kind of be conscious of that reality.
As a college teacher, I blame the crowd a lot.
I mean, sometimes it is, but that's the thing too. Like, if you can, that's kind of the lesson of learning too. If you can recover from that, and usually it's like, oh, I guess you all don't like whatever the topic of your joke was about, or
I guess you don't like getting anything out of the $40,000 you're spending a year to come to college. Yeah, and I try not to equate it too much. But there is a similarity between getting in front of a classroom and getting in front of a crowd. Mm. You have to sell information or sell jokes. I mean, you're kind of a bit of a salesperson when you're up there. Like, I want this joke
and
to
you have
come
a
across.
5-minute time limit.
Right.
It's like an elevator pitch, except slightly longer.
Exactly. It's a slightly stuck elevator pitch, yes, without the cheesy music.
Yeah, you've hit the weight limit, and you're just kind of waiting for...
Right. Or it's a Trump elevator, and it's shitty.
Yeah. Or, it's just maybe it's just a really tall building. It's just like, how long is this elevator ride? But, or you realize one of you did not actually press any buttons to go anywhere. So you're just sitting there awkwardly for
my problem in life is I press too many buttons.
Yeah.
Not necessarily just with elevators.
What was your biggest takeaway from your first set? Having tried it for the first time, what was...
The exhilaration of doing it. Like, I mean, it is such a bold move. Like, I know that you've done a joke about, like, oh, you're really brave. You know, I mean, it does take a little bit of that. Like, you have to have that kind of sink or swim kind of mentality, like, and just this vulnerability of getting up in front of people. And depending on how personal your sets are, like, I mean, I think of, like, Anthony Jeselnik, who's not necessarily sharing deep parts of his soul
my
with
hero.
the audience.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Your line of work in the whole setting up and then taking the massive dirty left turn or dark left turn.
There's a downside to that too, where I think after a while people start to expect the left turn, so I do try to shift to a more standard joke or something.
Right, take a right turn or continue straight, or say something like super mundane. And because if you set up the left turn, people are going to be excited. Like,
where's
this what does that actually mean? And they'll be thinking about that. You may lose them a time or two, but it's keeping them on their toes. And I think that's a lot of what entertainment is, and I tell this to my music students a lot, is like music is a series of patterns, and then like a composer sets a series of patterns and then changes it, because that's where the intrigue of it comes. And I think that there's something similar in comedy too. Like, if you set up a pattern and everyone starts to expect it to go a certain way, you're like, actually, we're changing it this time. And I think that's a lot of fun. It's not necessarily toying with people, but it's 100% toying with people.
Yeah. Subverting expectations and getting them in on. That's the thing, too. It's like you have to get them to find what you find funny. You have to bring them around to, because I find, you kind of alluded to it, I find a lot of dark things funny. And not all audiences are going to be on board with that. Like tonight, I did some jokes where I was actually surprised they did as well as they did. And I mean, they weren't bringing the house down, but like I kept the room on board with me. No, and I was...
You paint yourself sometimes as like world's worst dad.
Yeah.
But I find that amusing.
Yeah.
I also find hope in my own upcoming parenthood.
Yeah. I actually had a friend who came to one of my comedy shows. He saw my set. He's like, hey, have you ever thought about just like at the end of it, just be like, hey, I was just kidding. You know, just like make it clear to the audience. I was like, well, it's a comedy show. So I hope they understand that it's a joke.
Just kidding.
But like,
my daughter died as soon as she
exactly.
Yeah, I feel like if you did that, you would still find another like dark way to take that though.
I kind of did that with the one joke I did about
the Planned Parenthood.
No, well, yeah, but
well, also that one.
I did a joke about a friend giving me the N-word pass. And then at the end of that, I was like, I'm just kidding. I don't have any black friends. And so, that kind of brings it out. And it's definitely a gamble trying to. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to try stand-up comedy for the first time?
Yeah, I'm to quote another comedic influence of mine, I'm not great at the advice. Can I interest you in a sarcastic comment? It's Chandler Bing from Friends.
Which is funny because you look like him too.
I do a little. Yeah, a lot of friends in high school called me Chandler. I got a lot of. I was also bad with women, so there were a lot of similarities.
Could you
between me
be
and
any
Chandler.
more derivative?
I could not be any less funny. I don't know. Depends on the night. But no, and honestly, and kind of going back to a previous question about comedic inspiration, it wasn't just stand up. I could see myself, because I've done enough theater and comedy, I would love to see myself on a sitcom at some point. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll just say that on your podcast so it blows up and someone's like, oh, we want this guy at a sitcom. Right. No, I feel like
shot in the thumbnail.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like that'd be great. I'll make sure that it's a little creepy because that's what everyone in LA is going for. So
you smile with your mouth but not your eyes. That's the secret.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. No, but I love the sitcom form. So that would maybe be a longer term goal for me. But also there's so many other goals that are more important to me, which is, we're about to have a kid in anywhere from 2 to 20 days. So that is kind of a real life thing that's kind of affecting. It's giving me a lot of material that I need to work on throughout the summer. But I think the advice is just draw on your own experience more than what you think people will find as funny. Because when I first started, I was making dick jokes, sex jokes. I didn't do many drug jokes because I never really did drugs other than weed, which isn't a drug; it's an herbal supplement.
Officially speaking,
officially on the record,
any cops
speaking,
listening.
Right, it's an herbal supplement now legal
prescribed by a doctor
in these United States university. I don't know where I am.
Check his office; he's probably got weed.
I certainly don't, unless some students have planted it there. Because anyway, no, I would just say and I know this is a journey for all of us, finding what is unique to you, what is genuine to you. Because if you try to become the next Mark Norman, that's just a name that came to me because we talked about him earlier, or Sam Morrill or Taylor Tomlinson or whoever your ideal comic is, they're not you. You may have similarities with them, but you have your own unique experience. And I tell this to my students too, you have to live out your own unique self to become your own unique self. And so if you start making jokes about things that you think are funny, but you have no genuine voice in it, it's not going to land with the audience as much as it is from your own pain, your own triumphs. If you have any, let me know about them because I don't feel very triumphant these days. But
I think that was
just be you.
I think that was one thing I kind of learned too, because when I first started, I definitely tried to model myself after Anthony Jeselnik and do his cadence and style. Yeah. And looking back on old videos, it comes off very robotic. I'm trying to be dry, but it's too monotone. Fortunately, some of the jokes still hit, but that's not me and that's not natural. So I have figured out to be dry and be natural and but still be me. So it's not. Yeah, I think that's probably good advice. Is you don't have to. You can emulate someone, but you don't have to copy them.
Right.
You can take inspiration from their style or maybe topics. But yeah, I think that is a very important part because a lot of the jokes I do, there's maybe a kernel of real life into it. But it is just a joke. And you got to find a way to turn mundane real life stuff into stage funny stuff.
Right. And that's what I really respect about Dave Bergazzi right now. And he's someone I've seen within the past 6-7 months. He's blown up since COVID, just the last couple of years. None of his stories are inherently hilarious. They're mundane stuff that he talks about. Going to McDonald's. He was on Fallon, I think, talking about going to McDonald's in a tux. Mm-hmm. And it's just that's the whole joke. It's just
go to McDonald's.
McDonald's is so lowbrow and a tux is so highbrow. And he's but we should be going to McDonald's. It's just a unique perspective that only he can pull off. And I'm not going to try and be him. I can respect him and try and do some things like him, but I know who I am. in what I can bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, like one of my favorite comedians is Dave Chappelle, but Dave Chappelle is a very different style from how I tell jokes. Like he is a storyteller.
Right.
I am not a storyteller. I am a set up punchline, get in, get out, quick kind of guy. Yes. But I kind of came to that realization. Yeah, no, I came to that realization like when I go on stage, I can't keep the audience engaged in this pace that he does. Sure. So I've still managed to find a way to, be funny in my own way. So I think that's good advice. All right, we're gonna go ahead and try to wrap up here for time's sake. Thank you, Kyle, for being on. Hopefully we can bring you on again, and we'll talk about some other career firsts in comedy. You got anything you want to plug real quick?
My pleasure. Sorry, I had to Chick-fil-A answer that.
Yeah. I don't know when this is going to come out, but if you want to try plugging events or something that you're going to be on, or your social medias.
So I'm on Instagram. I'm at Doc Remnant. I occasionally put stuff up there.
Doctor of Trombone, by the way, not a real doctor.
Doctor of Trombone. Don't have me operate on anything other than like a slide. And on TikTok, I'm at the Kyle Remnant because I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in the world, but I also haven't posted anything in like 9 months. Yeah. You should follow me for the once in a blue moon when I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I learned tonight there are Chinese Kyles. But what was the other? Oh, plug anything.
Any events?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know when this is coming out, but like I run a monthly comedy night at Seven Arrows Brewing in Waynesboro, Virginia. It's every third Tuesday of the month from 7 to close, 9 p.m.
Except when it's not.
Except when, if this comes out before May 28th, 2024, it'll be the 4th because we're having a kid. Mm-hmm. And please come to that.
Me and Kyle are not having a kid. He's having a kid with somebody else.
My wife and I are having a kid. She's having the kid. I'm there for moral support and also stroking her back. Mm-hmm. I've learned recently that that's helpful. But yeah, I just do more comedy in the Shenandoah Valley because it's a great spot. We got cool mountains and get in touch with us so we can make some laughter. All right. Thanks, Kyle. Thank you all for listening. Thanks, Catch Travis. Me at Travis Valle Comedy and various social medias. And let me know if you like this format and if you want to hear anything else. Take care.